You've probably seen these two nootropic supplements before. I mean, Alpha Brain is probably the most famous nootropic supplement, one of the very first, I guess, full formulations to hit the market, and definitely pushed by a lot of big names. Aubrey Marcus, Joe Rogan, and the Onnit crew have made Alpha Brain very, very popular, considering it's on the number one podcast in the world, no wonder. You then have NooCube, I guess the underdog in this little comparison, which is also a very popular nootropic online, but definitely doesn't have the same distribution and brand awareness as Alpha Brain by Onnit. So I'm going to put these two formulas head to head, and I'm going to tell you at the end of this video which one I think is the better nootropic formula for you, and if there are better options out there that you should potentially look at. As always, I'm going to look at the ingredients, compare those with the dosages, look at the price, and let you know if I think any of these are actually worth what they cost. And as always, the links will be down in the description and the first link in the comment if you wish to purchase any of these. So right off the bat, Alpha Brain has a big problem, and that is they hid all their dosages behind a proprietary blend. Not just one, multiple proprietary blends. Now, if you're familiar with the supplement world, there is no special formula, ingredient, dosage, anything that is secret, which means if someone is using a proprietary blend, it typically means they're doing it because they want to hide their dosages, usually for nefarious reasons. Now, I'm not saying Alpha Brain is doing it for nefarious reasons, but typically it just means that ingredients are probably going to be underdosed. But if you know how to read an ingredients label, you know that they list ingredients in order from highest dose to lowest dose. So we can make small inferences with how much is actually in there and compare it to NooCube. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with the ingredients that match up, and then we'll go into the rest of the ingredients or the formulas that are different. First one we can look at is L-Theanine. NooCube has 100 milligrams in there. I would estimate that Alpha Brain has 150 milligrams in their formula. Now, I've used dosages anywhere from 50 milligrams up to 400. I've felt the effects across the entire spectrum. Typically within the research, you're looking around 200 to 400 milligrams. Regardless, L-Theanine is likely to work in this. It helps reduce stress and anxiety. Pairs really well with caffeine, even though these are both caffeine-free formulas, which I really, really like because I don't like having stimulants within my nootropics. But if you do pair it with caffeine, for example, like a morning coffee, you're going to get a much smoother energy. You're going to take the edge off that caffeine, which means no jitters, anxiety, or any of those ups and down crashes. So both of those ingredients, really nice. They both have L-Tyrosine, probably at a similar dose, 250 milligrams of NooCube, because it's the first ingredient in their flow blend here, probably the same. Underdosed in every nootropic supplement, so I'm not so worried about that. Typically need 2+ grams to see improved brain function under stress. The fact that it's in there, all good, but you're never going to get a 2-gram dose in a capsule. We then have Bacopa Monnieri. Now, I believe on it says there's 100 milligrams in here. There's 250 in NooCube. NooCube is much better dosed on this ingredient, which can help improve memory recall, memory retention, and verbal learning, and is much closer to around the 300 milligrams that is used within the research. We then have Cat's Claw and both of these, which may promote cognitive function. Again, not any research behind it, but more of a traditionally used nootropic ingredient. That's pretty much where the similar ingredients end. So what I'm doing is I'm going to go through the rest of the ingredients in NooCube. So we have choline at around 100 milligrams, which is a precursor to a neurotransmitter to help with working memory. We also have Panax ginseng, which is one of the very few nootropic ingredients that has been shown to potentially work in healthy individuals, which is a huge plus considering most nootropic ingredients only potentially work with older adults or adults with some kind of cognitive impairment. So if you are a healthy individual, this works really, really well having ginseng in there. Finally, we have Lumax 2020, which is a vision supplement, which can help preserve eye health. And that rounds out the entire NooCube formula, but the ones I mentioned before. Alpha Brain has a couple of extras. We're looking at oat straw extract, which is in their flow blend, at much higher dosages that are in here, and may improve task, performance speed, memory recall, and executive function. But again, this is severely underdosed compared to that one study, which needs around 800 milligrams, which is more than this entire blend. We then have the ingredient that I can never damn pronounce, phosphosterine. We're looking at 100 to 300 milligrams daily typically to see positive impacts on memory in older adults with cognitive decline. But I would estimate there's around 50 to 100 milligrams in here. So maybe on the right dose, but again, mainly works with individuals with cognitive decline. Then we can go through and we have Alpha-GPC, which is relatively speculative nootropic supplement. Again, it's one of those choline precursors as a neurotransmitter to have a cognitive function, potentially underdosed in here as well. We then have tooth club moss extract, which is known as Huperzine A and most other nootropic supplements. Again, relatively speculative, and we're looking at potential help in cognitive function with those with Alzheimer's disease. And outside of that, not too much. And then to round this out, we have L-Leucine, which has very little research regarding cognitive functions, typically an amino acid that helps with building muscle. And then we have another ingredient I can never pronounce, pterostilbene, and that may fight cognitive decline as you age. And I estimate there's around 10 to 20 milligrams in this. So So that rounds out the formulas of these two supplements. Just based on the ingredients list and dosages, I would class NooCube as the better option between these two, mainly because it has transparent dosages of the ingredients. They're typically dosed higher, and there are less speculative ingredients in this, whereas Alpha Brain hides all their dosages, uses a lot of speculative ingredients within their formulation. Now, the other thing to be aware of is that Alpha Brain did have a lawsuit against them. I believe they settled that. It was someone essentially just suing them based on their research, saying that it worked no better than placebo, but I think that has been thrown out. Now, Alpha Brain does have research on its formula where NooCube doesn't, where they found that taking Alpha Brain for 6 weeks significantly improved tasks delayed verbal recall and executive function compared to placebo-controlled group. And while there's nothing wrong with research being funded by Onnit, the two leading researchers on the paper received funds for consulting with Onnit. So right there, you've got a very strong risk of bias within that study. So take that with a grain of salt. So let's cover the price of these to see which one ends up coming out on top. Now with Alpha Brain, you're looking at $1.44 to $2.33 per serving, depending on the size of the bottle and whether you're taking a subscription. For NooCube, you're looking at $1.30 to $1.95 per serving, depending on how much you're buying in bulk. Relatively similar in terms of per serving, NooCube does come out cheaper. And the fact that NooCube does have a better formulation, in my opinion, than Alpha Brain and is slightly cheaper, NooCube takes the cake between Alpha Brain and NooCube on the head-to-head comparison. However, neither of these are our #1 nootropic on this channel. And if you want to know what that is, check out this video next because it goes through our top 5 nootropics for memory and focus. NooCube is on that list. It is just not #1. So make sure you watch that video next.